The next part of the programming this afternoon is going to be brought to you by the Baking Industry Forum, which is a very special group of bakers and suppliers that come together to focus on and discuss issues that really affect both sides of the baking industry. I think anyone that's ever served on it would tell you that it's better than a committee, it's more like a club, and everyone's really there for the mutual benefit of problem solving. The panel today is brought to you by Reading Bakery Systems, so we thank them for their sponsorship. And just as soon as everyone has a chance to take a seat, we will go ahead and get started.
Hi, I'm Chad Larson with Mellow Cream Donuts. I've been to the BEMA convention 5 times, so this will be my 6th here in Puerto Rico. There's dozens of things I love about the baking industry. I've been doing this for my entire life. And I think the best thing is the closeness of people. I love all the friends that I've made over the years, and it is just exceptionally great being at the BEMA convention to reconnect with all these great friends that I've made.
Hi, I'm Brandon Brilliant with AMF Bakery Systems. This is going to be my 5th convention this year. And one thing that I love about the baking industry is how passionate all the people are.
Hi, I'm Mike Porter with New Horizons Baking Company. This is my 10th BEMA convention. The one thing I love about the baking industry are the people. They are the most passionate, committed, and dedicated people I've ever had the privilege of interacting with. Enjoy this convention.
Hi, I'm Justice Larson with United States Bakery. I've attended 2 BEMA conventions, and one thing I love about the baking industry is that our industry is a master class in precision under pressure.
Good morning, Richard Ybarra, Public Supermarkets. Been coming to the convention here for 7 years now, and have truly enjoyed my time here with the whole team and all of the suppliers and bakers that have been coming here. Built relationships on both sides with bakers and also with the suppliers. My favorite part of it is just being able to collaborate with these individuals directly. That to me, that's valuable.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon. This is Chad Larson from Mellow Cream Donuts. Glad to see all of you out there. You know, when we started talking about what to bring from the BIF group back into BEMA and how to help impact the industry, I'm a newbie to the BIF group, but we threw out AI because there's so much buzz about it. And as we started to talk, I said, there's a group of us that don't really know what AI is or don't really know where it came from. So I kind of get to play the part of the new I, as we call it, in continuous improvement, and look at it from a view of that we don't really understand it yet. So how many of you, show of hands, how many of you knew that AI is conceived back in the 1950s? I don't see any hands out there, right? I was shocked when I learned that. Maybe 1 or 2, okay. Oh, maybe a dozen of you get it, but nonetheless, many of you didn't know that. I didn't know that. I had no clue. So as I researched this and started to understand what it was about, it started to come back from this broad perspective into something that's actually digestible. And as the team started kicking around ideas, we started to understand why it wasn't accessible in the past. Really, AI, the idea of it back in the 50s, was a theory, an idea of how math could be used to give and drive intelligence into machines. And part of the challenge was there just wasn't computing capability back then to support that. You know, you remember back in the day, and some of us are old enough out here that remember the punch cards and some of the reel tape memory, you know, rooms that were filled with computers that did what we do, less computing power than we carry around in the supercomputers in our hands. That's what was really the challenge to get it rolling. But in the 80s, we made some quantum leaps in technology that allowed us to utilize the tools that were developing into this intelligence and start to put the math behind it. Obviously, in the 90s and 2000s, you started to see things like Facebook, MySpace, those things that started to drive logarithms that gave us the ability to use math to determine how things and predictably pattern things that could give us insight into how it would happen. So go past that in today's world. I mean, how many of you use social media, or moreover have used your Siri on your phone, or you use the Netflix recommendations? That is all AI. So whether we realize we use AI or not, in today's world, we're all touching it every day, probably throughout our days. Things that we don't even think about behind the scenes, AI is driving how traffic moves in cities, telling us when traffic is going to be heavy or light, or when restaurants are busy or not busy. That's based on the rings going on at those restaurants at that moment. They're using AI to drive that intelligence back to us. What happens is, as a society, we can actually start to do things faster. It supplements everything that we do as a human thought process. It doesn't quite reach human thought process speed. We still, our supercomputers we carry around in this bucket we call a head, is still faster in many ways in a lot of the things. So there needs to be human intervention, but it's still taking this whole idea of math and applying it to something to make the world faster. And I think what's going to be really interesting as you listen to this presentation with these brilliant people, one of them's right next to me. They're going to show you how we're applying that actually in real world, real time into the baking industry, which has never really been demonstrated. These folks, and Justice, who's on the telescreen here shortly, are at the bleeding edge of what I would say AI is capable of doing in our industry. And the theme behind it is always going to be, what do we do and how do we do it with less, right? Do more with less. And that's really where this is going to drive in this conversation. I believe when you walk out of here, you are all going to ask more questions. You're going to take thoughts back to your teams, and you're going to want to go to IBIE and understand how does this drive change in our industry, and it's going to happen faster than you think it will. So I'm going to pass it on to Brandon.
Excellent. Thank you, Chad. So I'm Brandon Brilliant, GM and Executive Product Manager for AMF Bake Tech Systems, based out of Atlanta, Georgia. So as you very eloquently got us started, we're going to cover a lot of ground today. We're really here to holistically talk about how artificial intelligence is going to impact the baking business as a whole, and we're going to focus on some different segments, right? So we're going to go all the way from employee recruitment and onboarding to how to make maintenance and production teams more effective, maybe even answering some fundamental questions about what products you should be making in the first place. And on top of that, a huge hinge point in the interaction with AI and the way that it's going to transform our business is in the production lines themselves. So I'm going to be spending some time talking about where we're headed from both a unit machine point of view and an integrated complete system point of view as we drive smarter and smarter technology into the machines and become more reliant on computer systems and less reliant on some of the old-time walking knowledge that we're all losing in the bakeries. So you just heard through the baker panel, one of the imminent challenges in our industry is training and losing people that carry all of that knowledge. What we're going to be able to replicate through an immense amount of computing power, we're going to be able to drive those experiences into the machines themselves, not just in the operators that are walking up and down the line. So we're going to start talking about what the intent is, right? The intent of augmenting the production lines with artificial intelligence is to both increase operational efficiencies, reduce waste, and to lower energy consumptions. So there was a case study done on a semiconductor manufacturing facility. They have integrated from the unit level all the way through complete production line systems some of the same characteristics that we're going to talk about today that apply to baking. And in doing so, they improved their manufacturing efficiencies by 60% and saw downtime in the line reduced by up to 40%. So let's scale that to what that means for our world. In North America alone, the market size is $100 billion. If we can see operational efficiencies move by that kind of a measure and waste to move by the kind of measures that have been demonstrated in other manufacturing industries, this starts to really paint a picture for how impactful this can be in all of our businesses. So step one, let's start with a common understanding about what some of these terms mean, because we're all going to repeat these a couple times through our discussion today. So at its core, artificial intelligence, what is it? Chad did a really excellent job explaining this is really just, it's computers doing math exceptionally fast. So for decades, the limiting factor in the capability of artificial intelligence has been the computing density of chips. There have been monumental gains in computing power in the last 15 to 20 years, and we're starting to get to the point where we're unleashing some really powerful capabilities that are admittedly scary to some. I don't know how many of you have begun interacting, probably a lot in the last 12 to 18 months, with systems like OpenAI and ChatGPT. Some of the information that you can glean from conversations with these systems is almost horrifying, how quick and how intelligent some of these models are. So how are we going to use this for good? How are we going to use that extreme computing power to drive real business benefits in all of our businesses? That's what we're here to talk about today. Machine learning. Machine learning at its core are algorithms that improve through experience and data analysis. What this means is the more raw data and the more runtime that you can experience one of these algorithms to, the better decision making it's going to make over time. So you're iteratively going to get stronger and stronger performance and more accurate decisions out of machines as they consume larger and larger pools of data. And then finally, industrial AI. So industrial AI is a specialized AI that analyzes sensor data to create actionable insights. But what's important are the different ways that we can manage those actionable insights. So at a core level, at a very analog level, those actionable insights can be simply prompts to an operator. You may have a message pop up on an HMI that says, we'd recommend changing the temperature in zone 2 of your oven up by 15 degrees Fahrenheit. The next level of implementation and the deeper level of implementation is to bypass that human altogether. The system, through a system of data collection, it might be using vision at the discharge of the oven, it might be using laser height detection in the proofer. It's going to recognize the fact that we need extra temperature in zone 2. You can automatically drive that set point change through the PLC into the oven, and you can make a course correction, achieve your target benchmark product without ever having to involve anybody on the production floor. So where do you start? You don't get fully integrated lights out systems on day one. You can't flip a switch and make this happen. Where you start at unit equipment, and actually many of you in this room have already truly begun this process. The easiest path toward utilizing some of these technologies is really with predictive maintenance. So in simple terms, this is equipping your machines with things like thermistors in an electric motor, or vibration frequency monitoring equipment on bearings, maybe temperature probes. Adding extra data collection to machines and being able to plot and trend that data against variable inputs and outputs. Once you both equip mechanically a machine with those extra sensors and then layer on an artificial intelligence program at the SCADA level that can communicate with the PLC, you start to create a machine that can both self-monitor and make recommendations for how to fix itself. So when done correctly, again in the semiconductor industry, preventive maintenance techniques have allowed them to reduce downtime by 40%, and in some instances give advance warning of machine failure 2 to 3 weeks in advance. So this is probably, again, the easiest thing to understand about how to get started and what this can really drive value into your company. Like, take something, a critical piece of equipment or a blower, like a combustion blower on an oven. You might equip that combustion blower with a thermistor in the motor, with a harmonic vibration frequency sensor that mounts to the frame of the fan itself. And you might trend the data about how the fan performance runs as it's operating in a daily manner. If you have a machine failure and you recorded elevated temperatures, or you recorded extra amp draw in the motor or extra temperature in the motor winding, the machine can start to model what conditions led to that failure, and then give you advance warning notices so that you don't encounter the same failures on a repeat basis. And again, the next level of integration at the unit piece, we're not talking about scanning across for entire integrated lines yet, we're still talking about a single piece of equipment, is to do iterative improvement and automatic set point adjustments. So this is making machines smarter and making machines quote-unquote self-healing or capable of doing some course correction. So the circle here, we're starting the top left, but the example given on the screen is referencing a commercial proofer. So that commercial proofer is going to be equipped with a sensor array. You're going to be detecting humidity levels, airflow conditions, temperature levels inside the environment of the proofer. And you're going to detect variations throughout the process. So for instance, every 10 or 15% of the travel in the proofer, you might be using laser detection to see how fast that product is growing in the proofer. You may have had changes in your ingredient supplier. You may have had a crop change. There may be some condition that's causing a new variable in the system. And because you have that legacy trend data, you're recognizing that bun or that loaf isn't growing at the same rate that it was last week. Well, before you get all the way to the exit of the proofer and you've wasted an hour of production, or even worse, before you get all the way to your vision system and packaging and you've wasted nearly 2 hours of production because you've already got all your input costs on baking and cooling, and you've got an entire proofer full of product that's still going to be overproofed, we can make that course correction immediately at that 30% travel point and save hours worth of production. So again, having the machines equipped with enough data collection is critical in order to do this, but it requires both mechanical, electrical devices added to the equipment, as well as that artificial intelligence program layered in at the SCADA level. So RoboVision is one that's quite common early in the adoption phases of many of the manufacturing industries. It's one that we've spent some time experimenting and learning with, and I think it's got a lot of potential to be effective in our industry because it doesn't require a data scientist, it doesn't require a software engineer in order to set it up. It's a very user-friendly environment in order to get systems connected and integrated, and it's got a huge impact potential to start making changes, like Chad said, on a very short timetable. If you think back to the late 90s, mid-90s, late 90s, when email became propagated and the whole world got connected online, the way every one of us work in this room fundamentally changed. People don't work the same way that they worked in 1990. You're going to see the same wave of change through the augmentation of equipment through AI, and not just through equipment, but you're going to hear about how this is going to impact HR teams, about your logistics teams, and other functions in the business. The rate of change, I feel, is going to be significantly faster than what we experienced through Industry 3.0 with just getting everything connected online for the internet. So change is coming fast, and the neatest thing about this is the technology to achieve what we're discussing for this proofer exists today. This is something we can do today if we have the correct amount of data collection paired with the right model. So step 3, what do you do once you've gone up and down your production line and you've augmented each one of your individual unit pieces of equipment? You start to link those together and you start to gain the benefit of some horizontal solutions. So at every point in the process, you're doing inspections, you're monitoring input and output variables, you're slowly making set point course correction adjustments throughout the production line as you go from raw ingredient handling all the way through to packaging. And at the end of the day, with these systems connected to each other and networked on an MES level system, you have a single AI model that's able to penetrate each one of the PLCs up and down the production line. You're able to target your benchmark products without requiring operator intervention throughout the process. Ultimately, that's going to result in some decreased waste. Optimistically, we're looking at a 25 to 30% waste reduction and possibly even 20% energy savings when you calculate how much energy is going to be saved by not producing poor quality product. So what does this look like in practice? There is a rendering that you can see on the screen of a full automatic bread system. There are a couple examples on the screen about what it means to have vertical capabilities and what it means to have horizontal capabilities and how AI can help instigate these changes. So for vertical solutions, think about how each of these pieces of equipment are going to gain experience, how each of these pieces of equipment are going to be able to give you warning about bearing failures, warning about motor failures, warnings when they're operating out of tolerance, and how they're going to improve your overall efficiency levels. So at the mixer, we might have vision and energy monitoring systems that are going to automatically determine the perfect mix time for that ingredient makeup. What if products out of place on a pan could automatically instigate changes in the pan shaker profile? What if you had a vision system at the discharge of the pan shaker and you recognized I'm 10% too far forward in all the cups, I'm going to change the amplitude of that shake. You've not asked an operator to look at anything, you've not asked an operator to make an adjustment, and now all of a sudden you've got perfect product placement in your cups. Pale buns, what if we utilize the vision systems at the depanner to drive temperature and humidity adjustments in the oven? What if pale buns automatically increase the oven temperature in order to achieve target color? Those are all examples of vertical improvements that you get at that unit level. Where the real power is unlocked is when you start to network this together at that MES level and you start to gain horizontal capabilities. So this is when you're going to make changes iteratively through the line, where one piece of equipment has really got an impact on something upstream or downstream, and they're going to communicate together. So what if the data sheet that you got from the mill added 30 seconds to your mix time without ever having to try it? What if blotchy buns at the oven discharge changed the amount of conditioners that the minor ingredient system pulled up in the batching system? What if we detected an excess amount of buildup on the slicer blades and it automatically drove the system to increase the cool time? Those are the kind of capabilities that you can unlock once you, A, get each unit piece of equipment on the production line more capable, and then B, network them together on a single AI platform. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the moonshot vision and the goal is that you have a production line linked to your ERP system. It's going to automatically produce to your customer orders, and it's going to develop its own schedule that's the most efficient based on what available resources you have at the moment. So again, how do we get there? It all requires data. At the end of the day, you have to equip each individual piece of that production line, and you have to allow yourself and the artificial intelligence software access to that data in order to train it. You can do self-learning models, or you can do training models to speed up the development of the performance of some of that machine learning algorithm. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the data, none of this works. Once you have access to the data, once you've selected a common AI model for the entire production line, then you have to start working through that real-time data sharing. You need to network that in an MES level system. That's something that's probably well beyond everyone in this room, including myself. This is going to require integration from true AI and IT specialists that don't necessarily exist in this room. And that's okay. Not everyone in this room knows how the internet works, but everyone in this room uses it. So this is a tool that's available to us. You don't have to have an intimate understanding of the tool, but you have to understand that this tool can be absolutely powerful in your overall efficiencies, scraps, and at the end of the day, the bottom line. So once you've got your pieces, once you've got your data, once you've increased the capability of each of the components of your production line, now you get the benefit of that machine learning algorithm that's going to continually gather experience, make better decisions, and it's going to drive that sinusoidal wave to your target output, and over time, with the more runtime on the line, the performance is only going to increase. So the departing point there is that this is exciting to me because these are capabilities that we are on the cusp of being able to bring to reality right now. That we're past the point of talking about hypotheticals, and we're past the point of talking about what could be. We're at the point where we're going to start bringing this into action and really driving changes in the production lines. Mike?
Perfect. Well, excellent job, Brandon. As Brandon talked about the equipment side of the business and how AI can be utilized for it, now we'll talk about the people side. Because let's make no mistake, we all are here are bakers, ingredient suppliers, equipment suppliers, but as we say all the time, we're in the people business. And there's a lot of fear around AI, whether or not AI is going to take away jobs. We had our admin go to a training, and a comment made to her is that no, it won't eliminate jobs, but those who understand how to use AI will take those jobs. So it's important for us to utilize the AI, not be afraid of it, especially when it comes to people. And as we learn more about it and have an understanding that there is a change coming of how to use AI and its technology, how do we do things quicker, faster, smarter? And so here's some things that our company is either doing, things we're looking at, or what ifs. What if we could do this kind of thought process as we go through? So we're looking at the front end of streamlining our recruitment processes. How do we use AI to recruit better, to attract good talent, the right people in the right place doing the right things? How do we enhance our employee engagement through AI technology? How do we look at our performance of ourselves, our team members, through utilizing the analytics that AI can provide for us at a much rapid pace than a normal performance review that you would have when you sit down? How can we analyze that and use the data to move forward? So think about resumes. So resume analysis. You apply, a new job, and you get 30 to 300 resumes for that job. How do you go through it? How's your HR team go through that process? Well, what if you can take all of those resumes, put the highlights that you're trying to achieve for. If I'm looking for a bun supervisor, I want to be specific about the talents and the skill sets of a bun supervisor. So I can search and analyze all those resumes so quickly to say, okay, here's a bun supervisor, X amount of experience, and put all the data requirements, criteria you want to spit out the recruit that you want. And then you can move that to identify those candidates. And think about your HR teams. What do you want them doing? Do you want them in the office going through stacks of papers, analyzing? No, we want them to be engaged with the people. We've been talking about people, all week in our facilities about engaging. We have to meet the people where they are. And we don't do that by sitting in offices, looking at papers. So how do we get our HR teams more engaged with the people? We'll take those repetitive tasks away from them to allow them to be able to engage with our folks and hear from them and meet them where they're at every day. That jumped. All right, the slides are backwards, that's okay. Compensation benchmarking. So for our company, we've been expanding into larger areas and larger cities from our previous 2 bakeries we had in rural Norwalk and rural Indiana. So one of the things we were challenged with is benchmarking our compensation. So how do we use AI to look at those communities in the baking industry so that we're competitive from a salary and compensation, from benefit programs and stuff within those new areas that we're building our new facilities at? If we can do that, then we can attract the top talent because we know we're benchmarked against the industry, we're benchmarked against the communities that's new to us. We don't have the intel. We don't have to hire consultants to come in and tell us. We're utilizing the AI technologies available for us to help guide us and direct us, use that data, analyze it, and make good judgments and good decisions for new hires. And by doing that, we can maintain a competitive advantage. We know what the market rate is set at. We know what people are looking for because we're looking at the data to tell us that. Because if you think about, the old school baking, it's just the way we've always done it. If we don't change, we don't adapt to the workforce that's out there and understand their needs, then the best way to look at that is using the technology that they're using already themselves. You look at social media, you look at all the avenues that this new workforce is utilizing every day. And so as a company, we have to meet them where they're at. We have to adapt to them because I can tell you, they're not going to adapt to us. And what the Gen Zs are looking at, they love technology. They want to understand it, and especially as you get more talent that has different languages. How are you going to communicate to those effectively? So utilizing AI to take that information and convert it over to the languages that these people speak that you can't communicate with because you don't have unless you have 15 interpreters in your facilities, it's been a challenge. So this kind of skipped. So we went to onboarding. So compensation is supposed to be last, so the slides got backward. That's my fault. On the onboarding side, so utilizing AI to look at personalized training plans. Understanding a new hire can come in, whether it's a team member on the floor, whether it's a management employee, understanding their skill sets, understanding their experience. How do we utilize that? Hey, less than 3 years experience or less than 10. Is there a personalized training plan that we can put together based on that information? Or maybe they have sweet good experience, but not bread and bun experience. So what's that look like? So utilizing AI to be able to help build those training plans for new team members or even current team members. We're looking at career ladders. How does a supervisor become the president of the company? Well, here's a career ladder. Here's the trajectory. Here's the needs of that. And utilizing the AI technology out there to help guide us and direct us efficiently and rapidly to get people to where they want to be. We talked through automating administrative tasks, setting up your meetings through AI. If I'm in HR, doing interview, scheduling process, looking at your HRIS systems. Is AI inside those systems to help new hires on their onboarding coming in to be able to go in and ask a question that maybe they don't want to ask somebody because they feel foolish because, hey, we talked about that in orientation, but I forgot. They can go in the AI assistant and say, hey, I have some questions, and they can get the information they need for them. And ultimately, that just allows a smoother integration for onboarding new people into our facilities, into our company, into our culture, and understanding who they are as they're understanding who we are through the technology. Employee journey, performance tracking. So everybody has 30, 60, 90-day reviews, and if you know on an onboarding on a new recruit, you should know in that first 90 days, is this the right person in the right place doing the right things for our company? But also, as a company, you have to reflect and say, hey, if I'm not having success with new hires after 90 days, is it a hiring problem? Is it an onboarding problem? Is it a training problem once they're in the door? So if we do 30, 60, 90 reviews correctly, how do we use the data that we can pull from that? And we've been testing this a little bit as we speak at our company, is looking at what the feedback is, and are there anything within those feedbacks that's consistent? Are we not doing the 30, 60, 90? That could be easy as that. Hey, I really wish I had more time with my supervisor. I wish I understood this more. Is it a communication issue? And those type of things. But what is the feedback from the 30, 60, 90s all together, collaborating into one cohesive report analytics that tell us where we should be directing ourselves to be in a better HR department moving forward. Supporting new employees. You look at, everybody, a lot of folks do pulse surveys. We do engagement surveys. And as our company always says, that when the survey ends, the engagement begins. The worst thing that you can do for a company is do a survey and then do nothing with it. Or it takes time to get back to that survey. What we've been doing with with AI is taking all the surveys, taking all the comments. You imagine, you're getting feedback from whether you have 100 employees or 10,000 employees, getting all that feedback, dumping it into AI, and within 30 seconds, you can have the themes of what your employees are looking for. Imagine now you go back to that employee the next day. Go back to that team the next day because you're listening to them and you're giving the feedback immediate, not 3 months in a town hall, but immediately. Or you can take all that information and dump it into a presentation, and within 30 seconds, you have your entire engagement survey, pulse survey, whatever you're trying to communicate, built for you to communicate effectively to every one of your team members immediately. Now think about your HR people, your managers, your plant managers, your COOs, your CEOs, if they had that stuff right before them, to be able to give that feedback immediately to a team member, how much more the team member feels that you speak of the culture you talk about, you deliver upon it, and it's not just words. Once again, standardization. You have multiple facilities. Every facility has a different personality. You have different plant managers, different HR, but how do you standardize and be consistent? Because that's usually the big, you hear the word favoritism a lot. Well, you like him or her more than you like me. No, it's really just I'm inconsistent. It isn't that I don't like somebody more than you, or I like somebody else. It's just I'm not consistent with my message. I'm not consistent of how I'm handling matters. So if we can remain consistent across all of our facilities, delivering the same message, using AI to help standardize those processes so that we can communicate across all 5 facilities the same way in our company, how much more effective will we be? How we improve those communications to understand the people where they're at that time and be the same message whether I'm in the room or whether our CEO's in the room, that the same message that we're speaking today is followed at every one of our facilities utilizing AI across any location. And ultimately improving workflow efficiencies. We want our HR teams, we want our managers to be able to hear and get the feedback from our employees, to be able to recruit, to onboard, train, develop rapidly, quickly, effectively. And if there's technology out there that can help us get there, why would we be afraid of it? We joke in our company, we used to ride horses to work, well now we drive cars. You have to evolve, you must adapt. Because if your company is not adapting to the new technology, then those employees are going to find somewhere else that is. Because that's what they're looking for, at least where we are. Maybe I'm the only one who has this problem, I'm not sure. But ultimately, what do you want to do? More with less. Automating of your repetitive tasks, data-driven decision-making throughout AI technology, using it, and think outside the box. How big do you want to be? What is the what if? What can I use AI for? And don't be afraid of it. Utilize the tools that's out there. Apply it to, you heard Brandon earlier, the magnitude and the dozens and dozens of things that we can do in the plants just on one piece of equipment. But what we can do with our people that run those equipments. And I think that's sometimes where we get lost in the simplicity of it. And this technology is, with AI, connecting people to equipment, is to make their life more simplistic with time efficiency and with follow-ups to all of our employees at all times. So I appreciate your time.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Mike. Renee, can you hit the next slide? Thank you. So I'm going to try to bridge the gap a little bit between that future state that Brennan's talking about and what Mike's talking about, and getting these tools into the hands of the employees and into the hands of the managers, and really talk about something that's tangible that everybody can take away today. As soon as you get out of this meeting, you could start doing what we're going to show you here in this presentation. So one of the big challenges that I think we all face is the turnover of some of our very tenured, excellent bakers or veteran bakers out in the field. So we have those people that went to those 16-week AIB on-site courses that became those expert bakers. I'm sure there's some of you in the crowd still. It's one of those rare talents you really just don't get anymore. And when you bring in a new person, whether they've been there a year, 3 years, 5 years, they obviously don't have that skill set. They don't have that eye for the dough. They don't have that knowledge base of years and years of watching this product run through to know how to make those adjustments that Brandon's talking about will potentially get made in the future. So how are we going to bridge that gap? How do we transfer that knowledge into these new employees without having to wait that 10, 15 years of them just getting that on-hand experience and diving in with the tenured employees that may not be there anymore. So Renee, if you mind hitting the next one. What I'm talking about is a custom AI model. So what majority of everybody's familiar with is a generative AI model. That is like the chat GPTs. This is a model that has been trained on billions of different pieces of information from billions of different areas, right? It's basically took the whole internet and is trying to take everything that you've done, every question you have, and run it through that whole model to try to come up with an answer and be creative and come up with something unique. Well, if I'm trying to train a baker on what to do in a specific situation, I don't want it to go out to everywhere and go look at, homegrown, kitchen YouTube videos on how they're baking at home, right? We're talking about commercial bakeries, thousands of pound doughs. We need them to know how to do what we do in a commercial baking setting. And this is just per se, if we're talking about training bakers, if you're talking about training your maintenance team, your HR team, your employees, Mike mentioned, employees being able to go into a model and ask questions into the HRS system. What if you had your handbook loaded up and that was the only thing? So what we're talking about is an AI agent. So a custom AI agent is only going to search the information that you add into it. So you can take your training material, you can take your maintenance manuals, you can take your information that you want to say, this is the truth, the one source of truth that I want you to reference when people are asking questions to you. You can use that and give them that tailored support to their positions and give them something that they can take their troubleshooting challenges and plug into and get an answer right away rather than tracking down a supervisor or waiting till the day shift comes in. So Renee, if you want to kick into the next one, I'm going to ask for some audience participation here. We're going to put that to the test. So I'm going to share my screen, and with Renee's wizardry, we're going to make this work. There we go. Okay, so this is an example of an AI agent. This is free. It's out on the internet. There's lots of these. So this one happens to be Notebook LM. That's something I've personally been playing with. I've got an engineering maintenance background. I'm not a baker. I've been trying to learn baking quite a bit. So this, as you guys will see, has been very useful for me, but the idea is to get it in the hands of employees. So what we've done here is we've taken all these different data sources. So this is all the training material that our companies put together for our bakers, everything from gluten lessons to flour lessons to yeast lessons, enzymes, salt, oxidation, mold inhibitors, right? It's a vast amount of knowledge tailored towards breads and buns. And with all that information, we can ask it a question. So what I'm asking the audience is, if there's any volunteers, what are some questions that might come up in a bakery that one of your employees might have? I'm having a challenge with this, right? We're going to plug it in here and see what we get.
I'm starting to see some air pockets underneath the crust of our hamburger buns. What could be causing that, and what should we be looking at to fix that?
Okay, so now it's going to go look at all the source material, look at the information I put in there, and try to come up with that answer. It takes 5 or 6 seconds typically to kind of go through all of this, depending on the complexity of the question. But pretty soon here, there it comes. Here's the potential solutions. So air pockets in your hamburger buns can be a sign of various issues. I'm not going to read through all this, but essentially we'll get the gist of it, right? Issues during mixing. Undermixed dough, inadequate gluten development. Explanation, potential fixes, extending mix time, verifying all ingredients are properly hydrated for gluten development. It's got all these bullet points in here. This is the reference into the actual material that we have. So we can make sure that it's not making something up. We can click into this, go straight into the actual reference material to the section that's in there to see, a more detailed, version of that explanation. Overmixed is another one. So let down or breakdown stage. Wetter, stickier dough, chemical bonds in the flour, protein fractured. Fixes, monitor dough appearance, feel and temperature. Slightly overmixed can sometimes be saved from proper mixing and fermentation adjustments. And it kind of keeps going through. Incorrect water temperature, gluten flour quality. So pretty quick, right? How many people on your team out inside the bakeries have access to this kind of information that quickly? So if you kind of think about, the art of the possible there, if you can get these models in the hands of somebody that's on the floor, they can get answers to their questions relatively quick. Obviously, they need a little bit of background and training going into it with the level of detail that's coming through this particular model, but gives you that immediate access for your employees to kind of bridge that gap on, I'm a 1 year mixing dough, haven't seen this before. The person that normally does it, that's been doing it for 20 years and knows the right answer, isn't here anymore, retired, day off, whatever it happens to be. Can I go into the screen, hit the mic button, ask the question, see the answers, and then determine which route of action I want to take? So again, just want to kind of show everybody some of the art of the possible on some simple tools that you could use today with material that you already have inside your manufacturing facilities, your ingredient companies, your bakeries, to kind of start bridging that gap and get that information out to your employees quickly. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Richard.
My bad. Hey, I'm going to get up and walk around a little bit because every time I talk about this, I get a little nervous. Not that the fact I'm nervous speaking, but every time I took this to my leadership about implementing it in my facility or our facilities, I got the big no. Just for the simple fact that we are locked down like Fort Knox, which means I can't go outside of our firewalls to get information that's readily available, that's coming from all kinds of suppliers and manufacturers that are running into these issues. Having said that, my first approach to our team was, hey, look, our BIF board, we started talking about AI and utilizing it for some of the opportunities that we have in maintenance, operations, sanitation, and I would like to go ahead and look at implementing it here. I said, so, the question back to me was, what are you guys using? And they said, I told them books, LM, and they said, hard no. So that was the first challenge. Second challenge is, first of all, you cannot go outside of the firewalls to start pulling data back in that could potentially be corrupted. Second challenge. Third challenge is how much software are we talking about? What are we talking about in regards to file sizes, servers, CPU requirements to churn all this data to get you the answers? That was the fourth challenge. But so we had to go back and kind of look at how we would potentially do something like this. And in order to do that and minimize, as Justice had kind of explained in his presentation, we needed to have the module or the platform only look at the information that we wanted it to look at. And I can give you an example here. It's going to improve our efficiency and productivity through standardization methods, data-driven decision-making processes, timely reactions to equipment adjustments. That is what we were trying to achieve with this AI module. But it had its challenges due to the fact that we are limited as to how much information we can move across our systems. Because we are a large company, we have a very small bandwidth for our automation teams. But we were fortunate enough that 10 years ago, every piece of equipment that we purchased and installed had a Cat6 connection. Everything is hooked to our network system. So that means if anything needs to be retrieved from that piece of equipment, we have the ability to do that. So that was a lot of the groundwork that we had to start going back and look at. So we did that, and now we have come up with a map on how we're going to do this, how we're going to get the information, how we're going to store the information, and how we're going to retrieve it. We thought it was pretty simple. I thought, we got lots of information internally that we had to create our own content to be searched. And in doing that, I thought this, as I stated earlier, this is a no-brainer. It's going to be simple. Well, I go over to some of our departments because we manage bakeries, delis, dairies. Said, hey, what do you guys have on file that I can go ahead and start putting into the foundation of this AI model that we could potentially pull information out of? And they open the door, and there's 200 books. Some of it has already been there for 10 years. Some of it has been there pretty recently, 5 years ago, which is great because that means we potentially have a PDF file. Everything else is what I call dumb data. It means it's been copied 6 or 7 times over. It's got wrinkles. It's got grease all over it. So how do you take that information and make it usable in an AI model? So that was another challenge. So we were able to identify ways to be able to utilize that for information and be able to look at the specific data that was entrenched in that document and get it to be reasonable in a question that was presented to it and be able to pull the data back out of it and answer that question that was asked. And we were doing that through another system that we already implement and use in our stores, and it's called Aurora. Never heard of it? Not familiar with it? A lot of people smarter than me know how to make that thing work. I don't. And Publix itself has probably an IT department that has 250 people in it. So my goal was to have them pick it up and say, we're going to run with it and go. Another mistake. So, we had to find a champion for it. And in order to do that, we had to make the information that was going to be presented relevant and usable to the facilities to be able to become efficient. So we put a questionnaire together, or I put a questionnaire together and sent it out to the different departments and said, hey, if you had the ability to ask an AI module just exactly, what it is you need to do to correct an issue that you have. And I got a load of questions back from them. Hey, it would be great if I could get this, if I could get this. Operations came back, very similar to what Justice was saying. Hey, I'm getting blisters on our buns. I'm having a problem with over mixing, I'm not proofing, so on and so on. How did I do that? Well, in some of our current equipment, that information is available. We were able to get those operational manuals and work with the QC department to be able to put together a document that had all that data that was at the fingertips. Our intent is to roll out, a laptop, possibly two, onto the floors where they're able to go get the data in real time. But yes, that's kind of the challenges that we were presented with in trying to roll out AI. But the potential for AI is great. On the maintenance department, you have the ability to attach a work order to a instructional document that tells you how to remove the bearing, torque, put the new bearing back in, torque everything back down. All you need is a good, solid mechanic. That's huge for us. We don't need somebody who's familiar with that piece of equipment or has been trained on that piece of equipment, just a good, solid mechanic. Same with the operation side, same with the sanitation side. But I'm just here to just kind of give you a little bit of information as to what it is that we were looking for. We do have a breakout session tomorrow, and we'll go ahead and get into in depth as to how we started to put some of those things together. As I mentioned earlier, there is a project that we were fortunate enough that we're doing now, and I'm able to get everything in PDF in a digital form that allows us to now build a solid model that we can go ahead and present to our automation team, or not automation team, to our leadership, to get the support to go ahead and continue to build on this model. So we believe that net in the end, the efficiencies that are gained out of this are going to be huge. I mean, just the payback is going to be tremendous on us to be able to get answers at the click of a mouse, or just internally, just asking it, and it'll go out and get the data and bring it all back. So that is kind of where we're seeing the AI model, and that software be able to support us. But like I said, we have a breakout session tomorrow, and I'll go into a little bit further depth as to how we structured it, how we started to pull it all apart, and how we're putting it all back together that makes sense for us to be able to utilize that on the demand. So that's what I got.
Okay, so I'm going to cover some of the watch-outs that are potentially coming up if you decide to go down this road. Nick or somebody can hit the next one for me. So a big one is really just assessing your specific needs. So you heard about that future state that Brandon's talking about that is totally possible right now today. You heard about the HR team with Mike and the possibilities inside the office admin work and the shortcuts or essentially efficiencies that can be gained in that to get people off their offices and out on the bakery floor where the work actually happens. And you heard kind of what Richard's talking about, and building a model similar to what we demoed that is going throughout the entire facility. So really diving into and go, okay, what's going to be the biggest impact for our team? And figuring that out is probably your best first step. From there, you can really start evaluating the infrastructure. So Richard mentioned he's got Cat5 drop down throughout the entire facility. I can tell you that I got plenty of facilities that does not have that. So that's one of the things that we got to watch out for is if I want to put tablets out in all the bakeries, I got to put a lot of infrastructure in to get those things connected in all the right places. So maybe that's not the best place. Maybe it is with the admin teams, the bakery managers, production managers, and getting them the tools because they already have a computer that's easy to access. So really kind of diving in to go, okay, what are we set up for? If this is our need, are we set up well to meet that need, or is that going to be a whole project in itself? And then really just identifying those potential challenges, right? So if we're going to go down the road of putting all of this information out on the bakery floor, manufacturing floor, are we going to have access to the tablets in the right spots? Are we going to have the right equipment that can handle the conditions that they're going to be in? Really, it's just getting that team together, like Richard mentioned, and saying, okay, do we really know all these impacts? What are the positives? What are the negatives? And how are we going to overcome those challenges to make this work? And then really just trying to figure out I think it's a Jim Collins quote that I like to use a lot. It's firing bullets before cannonballs, right? How do you easily test this stuff? That notebook LM model that I showed you, that's how we're easily testing that. No cost. It's just been time. We already had the material. I just had to upload it. And then we can start testing it, start showing people inside the teams going, is this what you're looking for? Is this going to answer your questions? Is this going to, be useful on the floor or not? Yes? Okay, let's take it one step further. Renee, can you hit the next one? IT support. Obviously, this is huge. Richard mentioned this. It's really where you got to start. You got to make sure that you have a team that can support all these new tools. This is typically going to come from your IT team. So, do they have the talent and necessary resources inside their team? I can tell you, I don't have an IT team size like Richard does, right? So, trying to find an expert in AI, or at least a handful of people inside that team that are really passionate and trying to learn it, is kind of key. If you have an IT team and nobody's even touched this stuff, it's going to be a watch out, right? They're going to have to help support this. The other side of it is they're going to make sure that, like Richard mentioned, that your data is protected, right? If I just jumped on ChatGPT and started loading all of our training documents in there, that goes out to pretty much the whole world at that point. If I started loading our financial information in there, that pretty much goes out to the whole world. Obviously not something you want to do. So getting with your IT team to make sure that the model that you are going to use is secure, that it meets all the security aspects that they need to make sure that you are keeping your business secure. So big one is getting IT on board, making sure they've got some expertise inside there. Next slide for me. Thank you. This one, honestly, is probably one of the biggest ones. Richard mentioned this with going into a room full of 200 manuals. Very, very important that you model your data into what you want it to output. So what I kind of showed was, gluten lessons, salt lessons, enzyme lessons. It was all very specific to bread and buns. I didn't have, say, cake donuts information in there. I didn't have pastry information in there. I didn't have English muffin information in there. This one was specifically built where if we wanted to look at bread and buns and how we solve challenges in bread and buns. So having that segregated data easily being able to upload into a model is key. If you kind of think of it this way, if I go and take a manual for a piece of equipment, inside that one manual, that one PDF, you typically have all of your operator settings, set points, and instructions. You have all of your maintenance settings, set points, instructions. You have your wiring diagram, your parts diagram. You've got your troubleshooting guides. You've got your indexes. If I loaded all that into one model that's supposed to be just for my maintenance team, they can ask a question, but then the answer they might get back has nothing to do with maintenance and troubleshooting. Or if I dissect that manual or ask the equipment manufacturers to start separating the manuals into these specific sections, I can just upload the maintenance section because this particular model is for the maintenance team. So if I've got a bread bagger that's out of time, I don't need it going through and telling me how to set up the touchscreen for the next item. I need it to tell me how to adjust the chains to get the timing back in, or home the servos, or whatever it happens to be. So to make sure it's getting you clear, concise information, getting your data organized into the right knowledge for the right person is really key. And that way you can really maximize that AI model. One thing I can see in the future for a lot of the ingredient suppliers and equipment manufacturers out there is the customers asking for the information that you're providing with your equipment, with your enzymes, with your yeast, with whatever it happens to be, all of the data information that goes along with it to be separated into these areas. Because I can tell you, looking through a lot of our equipment manufacturing models, because we tried building them for maintenance for some very sophisticated pieces of equipment. And if you just dump that whole manual in there, it is not the easiest, quickest way to get the information. It's a lot faster than trying to flip through the manual, but really I want it to focus on what the maintenance team needs. So getting that data managed into the right buckets for, say, maintenance, for sanitation, for production, for management is going to be one of the big key drivers as you start working into this world of AI agents and AI in general. Next one, Renee.
All right, I think that's it for the whole group. I do want to point out, I know Richard mentioned it. Richard is really going down this journey personally with Publix, and it's super exciting talking to him and going through with all the different steps that him and his team have to take to get to the point where they're going to be rolling this out in a new facility. So if you have the time tomorrow, I think it's 8 o'clock. He's got a breakout session and he can dive a lot deeper, answer questions, and I think it'd be a real value add to everybody that's able to attend convention. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the group, but I really appreciate everybody letting me jump on virtually.
Thank you, Justice, and thank you to the BIF panel. Let's give them a round of applause.